Good morning. How are y'all? How are y'all? Woohoo! Okay, awesome. Like Noel said, I'm Jazzy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the chief of staff at BetaNYC. If you need to get connected, here you go. Password is still good even after 5 years. I want to start off with a little bit of confession, just so you know who I am and who's talking. But this may be an unpopular opinion, but I love our public transit. Okay, pretty popular. I do my best thinking when I transit into work. It's my time to summarize and not just keep doing. You know, in New York, we're very busy, so it's nice to actually reflect. My favorite thing to do, confession, when I daydream, is to peel back the layers of my built environment. So at a wedding once, I pointed to a device fixated to the ceiling, and I leaned over to my partner, and I asked, "Do you think it's for cooling or heating?" It was for cooling. I looked it up later. Does anyone know the show How It's Made? Raise your hand. Oh my gosh, okay. Another confession, I like to fall asleep to How It's Made. If you're not familiar, it's where a monotone narrator describes the machinations of how paintballs are made, or jelly beans, rope, screws and bolts. It runs the gamut. You know, I think these are a reflection of me just because I'm a little weird, maybe a little analytical, but I also just don't like to take for granted the world around me and the human labor it takes for it to exist and for it to continue to exist. Whoop, whoop! Data works the same way, right? Data isn't the thing itself. It isn't the labor it describes. It's a representation. The data is how we try to make sense of something bigger, but if we're not careful, we forget the source. We forget the people, the stories, the history behind the numbers. And that's why we're here today. School of Data isn't just about understanding open data. It's about understanding where it comes from, who maintains it, who it impacts, and how we use it responsibly. It's about making sure our work reflects as close to as possible the reality, and it's not just abstractions. Today's a really magical day. Before I worked at BetaNYC, I came to School of Data, and I met my future coworkers and my future friends and my future community. What I ask of you for today is to remain curious, because the stakes are high if we don't. Who built this? Ask what choices were made. Ask what is missing. Who are we missing? And also, how do we make sure that our work leads to justice, belonging, and not just information? Woo! Thank you. In the words of Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator and organizer, liberating education consists in acts of cognition, not just transferals of information. We are now on land called Long Island City, but it is the homeland of the Lenape people, who have been its rightful stewards for generations. European settler colonialism violently displaced them, but Lenape people remain connected to this land and its history. Today, NYC is home to over 115,000 intertribal Native American and indigenous peoples, contributing to the vibrant culture of this city. We honor the Lenape and all indigenous people who continue to care for this land. We also recognize the enslaved and indentured people who were forced to build the foundations of the city we move through today. We shepherd the future, not just through innovation, but through care, acknowledgement, and responsibility. And as we work, we must keep in mind that every choice we make furthers the universe in a direction. And so I say, welcome, universe! Woohoo! Thank you all so much for coming. Let us thank everyone that allowed this to happen. Thank you so much. Jolly and Pam in the back with the live stream. Let's give them a round of applause. Woohoo! They're making these main stage sessions available to folks, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this. Also want to thank reInvent Albany for advocating for a transparent and accountable New York government. Woohoo! They work to strengthen the Freedom of Information law and put government information online. They were the organizing force behind the coalition of elected officials and good government groups that made our city's open data law happen. They advocate for government open data and the laws, practices, and funding to make it happen. And they are this year's live stream sponsor. Thank you, thank you. All right, now some of the business, logistics. Also, if we don't cover anything, please ask questions. No question is a dumb question. So today is a curated community conference. For the past 11 months, BetaNYC and OTI have collaborated to make Open Data Week happen. And while this conference is organized by BetaNYC, we could not make it happen without our partners at OTI and Data Through Design. Thank you. Today it will consist of panels, workshops, and office hours. Let's see. These are our values. Just want to make sure that you know where we're rooted in our values. Again, we've got workshops, etc. We've got lunch, so many things. We got a happy hour later. Today we have over 650 registrants. We actually had to close registration because we were at capacity, so thank you all so much. Woohoo! Over 100 presenters, 60 volunteers, 40 sessions, one amazing day. Awesome. This is a bit of the breakdown. We are minimizing paper, so we ask that you visit the link displayed up top to access the schedule for the day. One note for lunchtime, please grab one lunchbox per person so everyone has food. Also, the third floor cafe will be open at lunchtime. And one note about this room is please do not stand in front of the cameras because they are capturing our interpreters as well. Thank you, thank you. All right, the notorious cowbell. Cowbell means that the session is ended. When you hear it, that's time's up. We realize that it's not an inclusive way to end sessions, and we're gonna work on this next year. Speakers, it's crucial that you end when the cowbell rings. And again, please ask for help. Volunteers are in blue BetaNYC shirts. And also high-vis vests. If you are 21 and older and joining us for refreshments, you will need to show government ID to get a wristband at registration. So look for volunteers. Again, on the first floor, we have our check-in table. On the third floor, we have our info desk. Yeah, okay. All right, you may have seen some of these shirts being sported today. Starting at 12:15, our gift shop will be open. You can support BetaNYC's newsletter and mapping classes by donating. During our first session, the registration table will turn into a gift shop, and you can buy your democracy swag. Also, we'll ship it to you if you can't carry it home or if you want it shipped to you. Also, we ask that you wear a mask. Flu's going around. We want to protect everyone, protect our loved ones. Stay hydrated. We have water bottles available. And also, please be respectful. We're really here to create community today, not just absorb information and leave like robots. We have a very clear code of conduct, and we will be enforcing it today, but hope it's all good vibes. All right, let's talk about photo consent. Let's see. Say it with me. Black lanyard equals? Okay. Red lanyard equals? Pass. Nice. Okay, what that means is folks are wearing a black lanyard, they're consenting to photos, but if they are wearing a red lanyard, please ask them before taking photographs of them. Awesome. All right, more thank yous. Thank you to our sponsors. These are all the folks that made today happen. We could not exist or do the work without you. So let's give a round of applause to our sponsors. We also want to give a shout out to NY Connect All. If you haven't heard of them, their mission is to build New York State's digital infrastructure and connect all New Yorkers through the internet. The Connect All's office oversees statewide digital equity, the statewide digital equity plan, and administers over $100 billion in public investments across the state. Through their technical assistance grant, we were able to provide real-time American Sign Language interpretation and provide interpreters to deaf attendees. Thank you. Thank you to CUNY Law. They have been housing us for many years. We love to work with them. Thank you to our speakers today. Raise your hand if you're a speaker. Woohoo! Clap it up for them. Thank you to our volunteers. Raise your hand if you're a volunteer. Woo! School of Data is primarily run by volunteers. We couldn't do it without y'all. And thank you all, really. I hope you have a magical day. I hope you meet future friends, community, loved ones, etc. Who knows? And thank you especially to the Office of Technology and Innovation and the Open Data Coordinators and all the people within agencies who make our data possible. Raise your hand if you work at OTI or are an Open Data Coordinator. Clap it up for them. Okay. All right. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Martha Norrick, who I always enjoy seeing, New York City Chief Analytics Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazzy. All right. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see you all. Jazzy stole my raise your hand if you're an ODC move, which I was 100% going to do, so sorry about that. But I just wanted to welcome you all today. It's so impressive. I mean, this is like the first truly glorious day of the year. It's going to be 75 degrees outside, and you are here in a windowless room because you love data so much, and you love New York City open data in particular. I wanted to also just take a moment to thank the open data team at the Office of Data Analytics. Zachary, Kay, Alex, Ariana, Alfred, Alfredo, Sharia, Michael, anyone who's ever been a part of the open data team. I think there's some Jen is here who was a fellow last summer. We have many of you have been involved in New York City open data in some way over the years, and also very special shout out to Oliver, who's an honorary member of the open data team every year around this week. And they help put on the entire Open Data Week and also contribute to this amazing conference that we're here at today. I loved what Jazzy said about data being kind of, this representation or this abstraction of what humans are doing in the city of New York, because it truly is, if you think about it, every parking ticket that's written, every tree that's inspected, every, you name it, that's like a human person going out into the world and taking a look at it with their actual eyeballs and then writing it down and then putting that row of data into a database somewhere that then the open data coordinators and the open data team bring to you, because it is your data. It is data that your tax dollars pay for they pay for that inspector to go out and check out that tree, and it is a critical way to understand what government is doing. And I think today, it's more important than ever to be a person who can really interrogate and understand what government is doing, and hold us accountable. We're so fortunate in New York City to have the open data law. It was passed in 2012. Shout out to Councilmember Gail Brewer, who I don't believe is here today, but the primary sponsor of that bill when it was originally passed. We're really fortunate to have this law, but we're even more fortunate to have this community that cares about it and that will defend it and that will hold us all to the highest standards in delivering open data to you. Okay, I guess a couple last housekeeping things. Open data. This is sort of the culminating event, I guess, of Open Data Week. We've had a whole amazing week of programming. Hopefully, you've been able to check out some sessions. If you didn't, that's okay. They're going to be online in a little bit after we edit all the beautiful videos. And you can also check out Open Data Week events going back now a few years, basically since we had to kind of come up with a new plan during the pandemic for how to have events. And then, so overview of Open Data Week. It's over, so come next year if you didn't come this year. But what's not over is the Data Through Design art exhibit, which this year is going to run through April 6th, which is awesome. In previous years, it's only run for a week. This year, it is running for 2 weeks at Brick in downtown Brooklyn, conveniently located at the center of all transit lines in downtown Brooklyn. The Data Through Design exhibit this year is themed Corpus, Bodies of Data. I went and checked it out already. It's amazing. I highly recommend getting over there to check it out if you haven't already. And we're so excited to be working again with the Data Through Design Artists Collaborative, who spend another team of volunteers who spend an incredible amount of time and the care and love creating this art exhibit that every year I leave with like my mind blown. So and tomorrow there is a workshop and panel with the artists. So definitely worth checking out if you want to speak to the artists or hear a little bit more about their thought process for creating their work. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jazzy, who is going to introduce our next speaker. And I'm thrilled you're all here. I hope to get to talk to a lot of you today. And we'll see you in the windowless classrooms on the 75-degree day. Woo!
Thank you so much. All right. It is my great pleasure to introduce a big supporter of BetaNYC's work and a phenomenal partner, a former tech worker, and someone deeply invested in creating an equitable public interest technology workforce, New York State Senator who also serves as chair of the Internet Committee and Elections, Kristen Gonzalez.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. How are you doing? Good. Oh my goodness, the turnout is incredible. I'm like, shout out. Can we give Noel and the Beta team a huge round of applause? Putting this together. I came last year as well, and I can tell you it's really encouraging and heartening to see so many people continue to show up and then have those numbers grow. So it's truly a testament to the work that team is putting in. For everyone here, two things. One, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Kristen. I'm the state senator for District 59, which is right here in Long Island City. We got any Queens people in the house? All right, Queens, well represented. I was born and raised here in Queens. Really proud to represent a 3-borough district here in Queens, but also in Brooklyn and in the east side of Manhattan. And the second thing I wanted to say is we're in the middle of our budget process, the executive budget, which is during our legislative session, and for context, that runs from January to June every single year. And our executive budget, the big state budget, it's about over $230 billion, a lot of debates on how we use that. So my voice, after spending 4 days in Albany this week, is a little gone, so bear with me. But I promise I lost my voice advocating for money for housing, money for our, honestly, our different technological systems in state government and ITS. Now we have a chief AI officer, which is amazing, after a bill that we introduced, and so much more, healthcare, climate bills. And so today I wanted to talk about my own journey to working in policy and being a former tech worker coming into office. And then I also I was asked to give some advice for some of the younger folks in the room who may be looking to do the same. So as I mentioned, I was born and raised right here in Queens. And my mom is a special education teacher. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment. And working in tech was not something that was even remotely on our radar. It was basically be a doctor, be a lawyer, certainly not a public servant, because public servants typically don't make money, and my mom's like, we need to make some money. And, you know, I got pretty politically active and radicalized when I was at a young age. I got into a school on the Upper East Side, and for 6 years of my life, I traveled between Elmhurst, Queens, which those of you who know Roosevelt Jackson Heights, you know that's a very working class immigrant community. And I would get off on the Upper East Side at 86th Street. And it was so obvious to me that this city was built different for different people. And in those 6 years, it got me to ask why. Why is our city designed to support the wealthy few at the cost of so many working people who I knew worked hard every single day? So if there are any high schoolers in the room, I started organizing in high school too. I started getting politically involved. And then when I went to college, I did the same thing. And I started, studying political science, again, much to my mom's dismay, who wanted to see a legal degree or a doctor, had to explain what political science was. But she was ultimately supportive. And I thought we could change these systems that were keeping our city the way they were by working through the legislative process. And I did that in a few ways. I worked in city council as part of the Young Women's Initiative in 2014 and 2015 under Melissa Mark-Viverito. In that role, we actually talked a lot about data and made some of the first data recommendations. We realized that even though the city provides a lot of services for young women, there was no data being collected on how many women were accessing those programs, what their demographic data was, and certainly geographic data. Are we getting across the city? Are young women across the boroughs aware that they can access these programs and support? So that was my first foray into how, honestly, public data is not used to the best of its ability, and certainly government is not filled with a lot of good data stewards. And then, I did that. We had policy recommendations, but those policy recommendations weren't funded. They ended up going nowhere. So I got a little frustrated, and I went to DC instead, because I'm like, if city council doesn't work, maybe we can go to DC and learn how to change these systems from there. And I worked on the Hill. I was in the last class of interns in the Obama White House, and I realized that I was surrounded by a lot of people who did not look like the people I grew up with in Queens, and also didn't necessarily listen to working people or everyday people. It was a lot of corporate interests. It was a lot of interests of wealthy, the wealthier folks in the country, because it was DC. And so I was actually pretty disenfranchised, and I left. I left and I transitioned careers. I thought about how I like thinking about systems and how I was good at communicating, good at stakeholder management, and used those skills, even though I had a non-technical background, to transition into working in tech as a product manager. And I got a job eventually at American Express on their data teams, on their big data team, actually, helping, of course, work with our Scrum Master and engineering teams and our Scrum teams to build out a lot of the designs our user experience team and UX developers were creating for a positive experience for internal Amex, basically my colleagues who were using the big data platform. But, I still had the bug. I still felt like I wasn't able to answer the question, how do we bridge the gap between the two New Yorks that I grew up across? And if city council hadn't necessarily done it, and if DC now at the time, it was the first time Trump took office, certainly wasn't gonna do it, I still wanted to figure out how to push for positive change. And so like many of you, who I think, came here today asking maybe some similar questions. How can I get involved? How can I use the skills that I have for good? I looked around in my neighborhood, which at the time was Elmerson Jackson Heights, and I found like-minded people, and I started talking to them. And in just talking to my neighbors, I found out about a few things. I found out, one, about AOC's first campaign, and so I got involved. Any other folks who might have volunteered for that campaign? Okay, that's a good thing. That means we're spreading, because last time I think there were a few. The second thing that I learned about was community boards. I joined my local community board. I started working on the census because I also realized the importance of collecting data through the census to bring back resources to our community. And then as a tech worker, going especially into the pandemic, and whose mom wasn't able to literally get in contact with her students for classes because they didn't have access to the internet, I started the Internet for All initiative with New York City DSA's Tech Action Working Group. And all of these projects, whether it was working on the census or working through my community, and the community board, working on Internet for All, they were just ways as an everyday person, as an average person, I felt that I could contribute back my own learnings at work or just in other parts of my life to make my immediate community better. And that process taught me that it's not government a lot of times. Government can affect good change, but it's actually everyday people who have the power to change every single system that we live under. And when we work together, when we create communities like these, when we organize from the bottom up, that's when we see our legislative, representatives being responsive, and that's when we see the needle start to move. And so I say that because even though now I come here as an elected official, which I was not intending, I'll get to that in a second, I say that because I want each and every one of you to know that you don't have to be an elected official to change all of the things you want to see changed. And that changing those things just starts with figuring out the few things that you're passionate about and talking to your neighbors. It's not as, I think, opaque sometimes as people will make it out to be, and the people who make it out to be that way tend to be the ones who don't want you to organize. So I look at this room and I see so much possibility. I see so much power. I see probably a lot of folks from a lot of different parts of the city who have a lot of elected officials who should be very responsive to you. Fun fact, Noel is actually one of my constituents. So we're seeing that direct relationship from Greenpoint. Any Brooklyn too in the house? Oh, okay. So Noel's a neighbor, and we also in Greenpoint and Williamsburg represent. But going back to just the organizing that I did, that was some of the most meaningful relationships I made, and I want to encourage all of you to do the same, to find those networks. And then to finish a little bit of a story of my own background, it was through organizing around these things that when we had a redistricting process based on the data collected in the census, and a new Senate district was created, that the folks that I had worked with and organized with asked me to run for office in 2022. And I did that as, again, a tech worker, as an everyday person with no experience running for office, and initially saying no because I didn't want to go back to government. I was so disenfranchised by it. I had been burned, and I think I'd seen so many of the things I think you all have seen in the news every day, especially in Trump's first term. But those very wonderful people convinced me. They had a lot of faith in me, and in my first race, even though we were outraised by 4-1, and my opponent raised, who was the cousin, by the way, of the congressman the AOC unseated, so another Crowley, who had also held political office before and also benefited from a lot of that same establishment, raised over $1 million against us. We won with an over 35-point lead. And that was also done just by everyday people. My campaign was filled with over 1,000 volunteers, a lot of folks who hadn't knocked a door before or picked up the phone and called a neighbor. And that fundamental organizing, volunteer management, and also just bringing us together was so much more valuable once we saw the results, the concrete results, the numbers to prove it, than any amount of money could buy. And so I think both in my lived experience, but also in my now political experience, I like sharing that because it's another testament to how each and every one of you has an ability to change things, even when the deck is stacked against us. Amen. And it's a little stacked right now, y'all. It's a little stacked. There's a lot happening, obviously, at the federal level, a lot of cuts being threatened. And state is one of the last lines of defense against an increasingly authoritarian, fascist administration. You gotta call it what it is. And I think government works best not only when we're all involved and paying attention and thinking about how our city and state decisions can have more impact on our lives sometimes than even some of the decisions made in made in DC, right? So Albany and City Council, when you talk about your rent, when you talk about the MTA, when you talk about healthcare, those can get severely impacted by your local governments. And I think it's important to know that when we're paying attention to what's happening, and also when we're using data to drive our legislative decisions, government can work better. So everything that you're doing as part of Data Week, as part of this event, as part of all of the panels that are happening, I see one on congestion pricing, for example. Those are all efforts to make our government work better using concrete data and facts at a time where a lot of our politics is driven by fear and not facts. So this is invaluable in this moment. You showing up is setting a better standard for our city and our state. And even when, again, that deck is stacked, this continues to grow, this continues to build, and this has the capacity for us to keep on bringing good things back for each and every working New Yorker. So thank you for being part of Open Data Week. Thank you for supporting BetaNYC. And I will finish with an invitation to all of you to reach out to my office if there's something that you want to see government doing, if there's a data project that you're working on and you want to see us use, please reach out. We're here to be a resource because we certainly are all in this together. And through our collective work, again, I know we can do good things. So thank you for being here. Can I take a question or no? Or did I run? Oh, okay. I was told I could take a couple of one question or two questions. One question. Does anyone have a question? Yes, right over here.
I really wanted to use this speaker, so thank you. I was curious about your experience working in the census, and I know like how important that is to use the data to allocate money to communities. And so, yeah, if you could speak more to like building trust with those communities to get that information and kind of represent the federal side that like you were serving as a bridge where that information will go to the federal government, but some people don't trust it and sharing that information. So if you could share any, experiences, how you were able to build that trust, I'd be curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is really hard, especially now, to knock on someone's door. There's a lot of fear, especially in working class and immigrant communities, for very, very valid reasons. But that's why knowing our neighbors makes a lot, and being involved prior to doing these projects makes the most difference. And I say that because building trust within communities starts with offering something back before asking for someone for something, if that makes sense, right? I think, the groups that we were most effective working with were groups like Make the Road, who had volunteers who were culturally competent, but also volunteers who had been in those buildings before, who knew the neighbors on their floor, who were trusted validators that folks should share their information with us and explain why the census was so important. So having those on-the-ground networks are invaluable for so many things: census, campaigns, just resistance in general, showing up for each other. And the cultural competency that comes with that is also pretty invaluable. So I would say that's why we want to continue doing that kind of organizing and get those folks involved for the next census, because when the next census comes, I actually truly don't know what it looks like because of all the harm from the federal administration to date.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. I will respect the one question rule. Thank you guys so much, and I'll be here for a little bit just in case. Thanks. Oh my God, of course. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Senator Gonzalez. She's so inspiring. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Orion's dad and executive director of BetaNYC, who will introduce himself through sign language.
Can you give him the microphone?
Hello. My name is Noel. Welcome. The deaf community welcome. My role here.
I have two roles. My first role is I'm the father of a deaf son. And my second role is that I am the boss of BetaNYC, or executive director. You can applaud. Today, now I'm going to pass it on to the interpreters to take over for the rest of the time. Thank you so much.
This is the reason why we have ASL interpreters. He's been at every conference since he was born. And I will skip the first paragraph because it is goes right to the heart. This little guy has let me learn so much about how we do not build an inclusive environment. And building an inclusive environment is a journey. And it's pretty much how my new parenting philosophy exists. Every step of the way, we must seek to understand each other and build pathways to communicate, and that this relationship is built on mutual trust. Becoming a father has opened my eyes to all of the ways that we exclude those who have different abilities. Being mindful of the small things means building an inclusive community. Today, we pay respect to all the Native peoples, past, present, and future, because we're on their lands. While we may have titles or leases, these lands were not ceded. Next, I want to clearly say that Black lives matter, that trans and queers lives matter, Palestinian lives matter, and disabled lives matter. We cannot move forward while our friends, families, co-workers are erased from data sets or history books. We cannot move forward when people stay in the shadows or in the closets. Our fight for the future is not siloed. Equality, equity, and opportunity are all interconnected. Small things matter in data sets, in our communities, and in our lives. Today, we ask you to be mindful of all the small things. In our solar system, we are this marvelous little blue dot. These two photos capture our home. On the left, we have the famous pale blue dot, that single bright blue pixel in the vastness of space, and that pixel is caught within a ray of sunlight. On the right is Cassini racing out of our solar system and waving goodbye. The pale blue dot was part of a final sequence of frames taken by Voyager before its camera was shut down to conserve power. It had completed its tour of the planets and had no further use for the equipment as it headed toward interstellar space. But Carl Sagan and Carolyn Porco, two imaging scientists on the mission, had argued for a family portrait of the solar system to be taken before the power down command was sent. One small act to capture the entirety of our species, our planet, and our humanity. In our galaxy, we are this little tiny speck of dust. And let me read this quote from Carl Sagan. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, and the carbon in our apple pies were made from the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of stardust. Today, we must remember that the universe is inside of us and that everyone deserves to be loved and everyone is welcome here. We cannot have today's conversation without these insights. So how is this connected to open data? Well, Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to a freedom of opinion, expression, and this right includes the freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. The Age of Enlightenment gave us the belief in data and in science. These blossomed into the progressive era, which gave us the fundamental rights of freedom, justice, and peace. These are inalienable rights, and democracy demands data. If we believe in human rights, we believe in the fundamental right to information, especially the information to hold our governments accountable. Through the past week, we have engaged and celebrated our freedoms expressed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the 4 freedoms that this community wrote as part of the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City. We have connected, we have learned, we have celebrated innovation, and we have celebrated collaboration. Thank you all who have taken an oath to defend our Constitution because we know that these are tough times and we trust in your ability to defend those laws. From the laws that we have written for ourselves, we take the power to hold government accountable. And today we are celebrating that freedom, our democracy, and especially the people who make it happen. This is what drives us as an organization as BetaNYC. And I want to show you the small team that makes that. So please give them and all of our speakers and all of our volunteers a round of applause. BetaNYC is a civic organization dedicated to helping New Yorkers access information and use technology. We're a small and mighty team of 200 years of professional experiences uniting communities with tools and practices. I'll let you guess how we calculated that value. And as far as I know, no one is a vampire, at least that I know of. So how is BetaNYC meeting this very unique moment? First, all of you, well, 4,000 of you receive our new weekly newsletter. Every week we share the most relevant public interest tech data and design stories, job listings, and events. And if you aren't subscribed, there's an opportunity to subscribe, so please click yes when you get that survey at the end of this event. Second, we're expanding our digital and data literacy programs, and in partnership with a newly inaugurated associates board, we'll host meetups, networking events, and something I'll mention in a minute. Next year, we're looking to complement Next year, we're looking to complement the Open Data Ambassadors Program with public interest mapping navigators. Navigators will leverage our parks and sidewalks as classrooms to teach open data while collecting missing data sets about the public realm. Our Civic Innovation Lab will continue to respond to the needs of community organizations and New York City offices. If you need data help, check out our Radar Help Desk on our website. Today, you'll hear how our lab assisted the New York Hall of Science and Hunter College. By the way, how many of you have applied to be on your community board in the last few years? Let me see those hands. You used a web form that was built by BetaNYC. We help borough presidents in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens ingest and analyze community board applications. We also help tenant protection groups access court data to ensure that people in the eviction process have support. You can hear a session about this as well. Lastly, we are building a broader pipeline for civic tech talent in New York City. This year, we're actively engaged in a planning process with CUNY Pit Lab to expand our fellowship into an apprenticeship program. You should attend the CUNY Pit Lab session to learn more about our collective vision of a civic and data analytics apprenticeship in New York City. Looking around the room, I hope you see that this is not another tech conference. And some of you aren't even technologists. Each of you is coming from a unique and valuable lived experience. You have a giant range of interests and skill sets. You've heard that from multiple speakers. Some of you have been involved in civic tech for decades, and some of you are brand new. We love you all. About a quarter of you work in government, 10% are journalists, many are data engineers, you're analysts, students, designers, librarians, educators, organizers, and yes, we look at the registration list. We are all here in the room because we want to improve some corner of the city, and you are part of our path forward. We believe that you just don't walk away, you level up with new connections and perspectives, you discover other people's struggles, you discover their insights and build solidarity. Yes, solidarity. This is not a scary word. To us, solidarity is a key ingredient in driving change and pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve for all New Yorkers. We believe that we cannot rely on people to come to us and that we need to meet people where they are. So we want to go back to a practice that helped form this community and has very much influenced all of the conversations that we've had with our associates board. Say hello to citycamp.nyc, which is going to be an unconference focused on democracy, civil society, neighbors, and government operations. At the end of summer, we hope to bring you back into this very room at CUNY Law School to discuss tools, tactics, and practices to ensure a strong local democracy. If you have a good use of AI, bring it. If you have a really good case study supporting your mutual aid, we love it. How you have a case study of how your team won a local campaign, I'm going to be in that session. We fundamentally believe that public interest technology is one tool in the toolbox of social democracies, and CityCamp is a venue for us to share, discover, and discuss all of the other tools in that toolbox. So visit citycamp.nyc to learn more about this vision, and I will fix the SSL warning next week. And now I want to take a moment to end with how I'm meeting the moment. The following words and opinions are not reflective of our partners, our sponsors, presenters, City of New York, nor the Fund for the City of New York, though they have seen these words. So I say the following words as your neighbor and as a cheerleader, and this is the last slide. So first of all, this could be our last School of Data. On January 1, 2026, we will have a new mayor. Well, we could have a new mayor. And for those of you who are registered as Democrats in New York City, you have a unique superpower. 11 weekends from today, early voting starts. This June is likely to be a very low turnout election, and we have a real stark contrast to choose from. Do we want someone who wears open data portals like shiny shoes, or someone who invests in teams that make them run? Do we want someone who strengthens tenants' rights, or one who regrets supporting the laws that are keeping people in their homes? Do we want our streets congested, polluted, and dangerous, or someone who supports mass transit, rapid emergency response, and safe streets? Do we want someone who supports the millions of us who work, or the billionaires who back them? Do we want someone picking fights and settling scores, or do we want someone who builds programs to address all of the issues that we're facing? Do we really want someone who thinks that they're above the law? How about someone who uses our tax dollars to malign and deposition into debt someone they've assaulted? I cannot emphasize enough the importance of turning out all of your friends and family. We need them to take this seriously. We cannot frack this moment up. Everyone in this room who can speak their political opinion should. We know that our immigrant and green card neighbors can't. I'm having an issue here. Citizens of the Republic, now it is a time to build a new Rome. We must teach, feed, house, and care for our neighbors. We must center love over hate. Our liberties, our freedoms, our ability to work, and our lives are at stake. We do not have the luxury of time. Fascism will never win, not then, not now, and never again. When the long summer days look dark, I have a little prayer for all of you. My knowledge is power. I will learn from neighbors and build our power. Unity is our strength. There will be no kings, no masters, nor slaves. Together we will liberate. Our love is freedom, so say we all. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I hope you have a beautiful day and time to hack the planet.